You're filming it?
I didn't realize you were here.
We are getting started a little bit late this morning, so it's fine. I'm not trying to make y'all stop talking, except I'm trying to make you stop talking. I am. So, it is 9:46 now, so we'll just let people come in as they are, and that's fine. I did want to go ahead and get started with a prayer, so would y'all pray with me? Heavenly Father God, we thank you for today. We thank you for everything that you do for us, God. I'm thankful for Jesus. God, I'm thankful for your Spirit. I pray that you would send your Spirit among us, through us, God. I pray that you be with me this morning as I just share some of the things I've learned here. I pray that you be with all the other teachers, be with all the other classes. I pray that you would just guide us through this day. God, we pray all this in Jesus' name. Sorry. All right, we're still here at Sinai. Honestly, this is going to be the same picture every time, even once we leave Sinai, so.
It's a good picture.
I like it. It makes me want to go now. But I don't actually want to, that'd be a lot. All right, so last week, if I were to sum up the main focus, it's that there is grace. So the Exodus was grace. That was where they were saved, right? When did the law happen? Did the law happen before or after the Exodus? Did they have to do the law to get rescued from Egypt? They didn't, right? I'll tell you. Is this okay? Okay. So the law was really more that came after. Sinai, this was another thing, if y'all remember this was a picture, I had the slices here. Sinai happens right in the middle. So we talked about the literary design, and the way that Hebrew literature is designed frequently is like, what's in the middle is what's important. And right in the middle, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, they're sitting there at Sinai, camped out right there. And then we talked about liminal spaces. Kara and I actually talked about this a little bit after, but what we were talking about is like, it's an in-between space. Like Oliver Creek, we're at an in-between space right now. It's a place where you are transformed. It's where you can be transformed. It's our kids are, especially our young adults, they're out of school, but the ones who are in college, when you're at a wedding, when someone's pregnant, that's a space for transformation. And that's what's happening. So that is what we talked about last week. All right, now, how do we get here? So this is what God says to tell the Israelites, okay? How did we get here in the first place? This will be a sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. So God is reminding them, like, hey, remember who this is. This is when God reveals his name. I am that I am. That's when he says this. It's like, they're supposed to come back. The entire purpose that he says is like, I'm going to rescue you so that you can come back to worship me. And all of that is centered on worship of God. They're going to learn about God on the mountain. And that's what they're trying to do. You remember all that? It's like, their whole back and forth with Pharaoh was like, okay, well, I'll let you go, but you can't take any animals. It's like, we got to sacrifice. Okay, well, you can go, but just the men. It's like, no, we all have to go. All of that. They were talking about, let us go so we can worship. And then at Sinai, everything changes for them. At Sinai, the Hebrews discover who they are, and more importantly, whose they are. And I'm going to keep repeating this. Their identity up to this point is that they have been an enslaved people, right? I don't know, 400 years, 4 generations, depending on which one. Think about how quickly you can lose your identity. Think about how quickly, you may know of families who have lost faith. Think about how fast that can happen. And then think about these people who, they are the ancestors or the children of the patriarchs, but it's like, do they really, really know who God is? You know what I mean? Like, I think they've lost a lot of that. And the whole time, they're getting drilled into their head how powerful the Egyptian gods are, how powerful Pharaoh is. So this is like, they need to learn again who their God really is. So who are they? Who are the Israelites? Who are the Hebrews? This is from Exodus 19:3-6. Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the people of Israel, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, my treasured possession. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel. Hopefully you're also recalling a lot of that. This shows up in the New Testament frequently, right? Peter uses this language. They were a treasure set apart for a special purpose. We sometimes miss the grace here because we see the Ten Commandments without that context of deliverance. We miss the grace because we read the judgment stories in isolation without reading all of the second chances that lead up to that. So some of the things that he reminds them of right here, just military victories. Like, you've got these people who, they don't have an identity. They don't know who they are. And they defeated, God did, but, the mightiest kingdom in the world at that time, right? He reminds them about Yahweh's care for Israel. That bore you on eagle's wings. That's really poetic, beautiful language there. He's reminding them, like, hey, you are welcome. You are invited to follow, to obey that covenant, to join into that covenant. That's that if you will indeed obey me. And then they can be set apart. What's the set apart language? Holy? Yeah. Consecrated. Yeah. The treasured possession. I may remember this because I helped sub for the Mission of God class. The Hebrew word here is segula, and it is a special, it's not just like, oh, you're my treasure. It's not Valentine's words. Like, this is something, it's like when a person puts away his or her earnings for a special purpose and then treasures what they have patiently saved. So Yahweh is said to have selected and saved Israel from among all the nations to be his treasured people. It appears 8 times in the Old Testament. Twice, it's about the king's personal treasury. You know what the other times we're referring to? Israel. So this is, it's they go from slavery, they are slaves, to the creator of the universe's personal treasure. There's something, does that make, it's just like, I don't know. He is trying to really drill into them just how special they are. They are set apart. Like, that holy language is, it's not just they're holy. They are God's treasure. Think about this from Jesus. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. If you want to sort of get an Old Testament view of how God seeks us out, look at the Exodus. In the midst of the nations, the idea is they are out there representing God before the world. And isn't that our role too? That's who we are supposed to be. We're representing God before the nations, before the people. The job and the role aren't forced on people. God has Moses go back to the people to see if they're willing. God goes up the mountain. Moses goes up the mountain to talk to God. And here's what we're going to be doing. Go talk to the people to see if they're in for this. Is this what they want to do? Exodus 19:7-8. So Moses came and called the elders of the people and set before them all these words the Lord had commanded him. All the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. And Moses reported the words of the people to the Lord. Yeah, we're in. This sounds great. We'd love to be a treasured possession. We've spent like the past 4 generations in slavery. This is amazing. This is great. Now they've agreed to a covenant to be a priesthood of believers for the nations. Now God speaks to them again. I keep going to this, but it's like rules. Like, oh man, it's just maybe it's just a generational thing. It's like, I mean, that's not. You could probably talk to the youth group. Like, oh man, I just feel handcuffed by these. They're excited about it though. I mean, look at Psalm 119. Have you ever read through that? What they're talking about is this gift of rules here. It's an acrostic. It's like for every letter of the Hebrew alphabet, they wrote. I mean, it's just tailored for that. The author is like, now we've come to the part of that most of us would like to skip over, the law. It's like it's really easy to skip over that. After Exodus 19, it's full of this lightning and thunder, and then we get 20 chapters of detailed instructions. It's like, I mean, it's not easy to read, right? It's not. But let me just read a few things from Psalm 119 for y'all. Joyful are those who observe his rules and seek him with all their heart. I have rejoiced in your laws as much as in riches. Riches, like there's that treasure. Like for the Israelites, this is their treasure. I will walk in freedom, for I have devoted myself to your commandments. How I delight in your commands, how I love them. Your laws are my treasure. There's that treasure language again. They are my heart's delight. As pressure and stress bear down on me, I find joy in your commands. I have trouble with some of that, right? That's not the world that I come from. Why are they so excited? To understand their enthusiasm, we need to walk a mile in their sandals. The Israelites lived in a time when people were desperate to know what the gods were saying. So I'm going to show y'all something. It's a prayer to any god. So this is like, how did the people of their time hear from their gods? Do y'all know how this would work? Like in the ancient Near East, there was a practice called divination. And this was to try to determine what did the gods want them to do. Do y'all remember Balaam? Like he's doing sacrifices and stuff to try to get God to curse the Israelites. They would like sacrifice an animal and like they'd get the insides and like dig through it. Like they didn't know. There was like the astronomers were looking at the stars. Like sure, they had big manuals, but it took a skill set to do that. And now this is a God who's speaking to them. This is the prayer to any God. May my Lord's angry heart be reconciled. May the God I do not know be reconciled. May the goddess I do not know be reconciled. May the God, whoever he is, be reconciled. May the goddess, whoever she is, be reconciled.
To cover all the bases here.
Yeah. It does sound a little bit like the
idol to the unknown God.
Idol to the unknown God, yeah. This was written in Akkadian. This was the language of Assyria and Babylon. Oh my Lord, many are my wrongs, great are my sins. Oh my God, many are my wrongs, great are my sins. Oh my goddess, many are my wrongs, great my sins. Oh God, whoever you are, many are my wrongs, great are my sins. Oh goddess, whoever you are, many are my wrongs, great are my sins. They don't know who they're talking to. They don't know who they're praying to. They just know that things aren't right. So, yeah.
And Paul on Mars Hill hits that
Absolutely.
head on.
Yeah.
He sees that as his opening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here, listen. I do not know what wrong I've done. I do not know what sin I've committed. I do not know what abomination I've perpetrated. I do not know what taboo I've violated. I don't know. There's just stuff. We talked about this, like Paul's trip to Athens. They don't know. But God is here telling them exactly how to follow him. He tells them, here's what you need to do. Here's how you can be a holy people. Here's how
Sometimes when we're praying, when we're like, God, if you
Yeah,
would tell me
yeah.
exactly what to do, that's what I would love to do.
Right.
So
Yes.
getting that answer.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, I think we do feel that way sometimes, even with the words here. So, but I mean, think how we feel having the word if they didn't have that at all, and then to be given it, you know? Like, I don't know, I think we start to get a hint of how maybe they felt here. Israel's laws are the fences within which life can flourish. They make it possible a distinctive way of life so that other nations can see what Yahweh is like and what he expects. The law was never the means by which Israel earned God's favor. The Israelites were saved the same way we are, by grace through faith. But their obedience expressed their covenant commitment or allegiance to Yahweh. And it kept them in a position to experience the benefits of the covenant relationship. The invitation to covenant with Yahweh was itself a gift. Not something they earned by good behavior, but it was not a blank check to fill out how they pleased. So the laws were really, they covered all different facets of Israel's life, because being God's covenant people meant being transformed in all of these areas. If you are to be a holy people, then that means that every aspect of your life is to be holy. What does Paul tell us to be, sorry, it just left me. A living sacrifice. Does that just mean here? It means everywhere, right? I mean, I don't know what it means in all contexts, but this is sort of what that was talking about. Everything you are is to be holy to God. Everything the Hebrews were was to be holy to God. And so, I mean, when it gets into this, it's going to be a little bit like, okay, wow, they're talking about everything. Well, that's what the point is. Like, they don't know what they're supposed to do with some of that. We've talked about this before. Torah is what we usually see translated as law. It would be better translated as instruction. It encompasses Genesis to Deuteronomy. There's stories there. There's stories that are trying to help us understand who God is and how he works with people. There's also laws, but it's meant to be instruction. I'm going to do something here that might be a little funny. I'm sorry Scott's not here. So I just want to compare so we can sort of see some law codes and some of the differences here. I was hoping, I thought maybe he would have a favorite. So, all right, here we go. All right, can't see that one. This is Tennessee code. I don't know what the symbol means. Section. Look at that. Section 559603. Use of safety belts in passenger vehicles. All right, I don't know if y'all can see. I'm going to scroll through this. No person shall operate a motor vehicle. No person 4 years of age. Has anyone actually read any of this before? I didn't even know that you could just like go see it online. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Like this is dry reading. I'm just going to scroll here some. It's a Class C misdemeanor if you do this. How much is the fine? And it's referring to other sections. Let's keep going. It's using words like notwithstanding. Oh man, I mean this is about seatbelts. I'm still going. You can't, not exceeding 40 miles. I don't know. Like, does anyone actually get all of this stuff? Maybe. And then there's the history. So as you change it, like various sections, you can see that 1986, 89, 2015, 2016. It's like, this is not the same thing as these laws. It's 3 pages printed. I didn't actually print it. I just wanted to see how far. There's in the book that yes.
But on that, as you did the history, the law started out very small.
Mm-hmm.
The laws from God started out very small.
That's right.
Just like the law for seatbelts started out very 3-liner back in the day. As the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all the people started building in, how big did the law get?
Well, even compared though, like,
And which is what we people have overcomplicated or added more to the law than actually was intended to satisfy us.
Well, it's also a different purpose. So, like, U.S. law is trying to explicitly spell out all of the bases. The law of Israel was to try to give some for instances, and it's like, if you want to really see what it looks like for the law to be lived out in the Old Testament, read the book of Ruth. Because what happens with Boaz, there are so many things there. We might look at this a little bit more later. What Boaz is like, he lets Ruth come in and gather what was there. He fulfills by being the kinsman redeemer. Thank you. And there was multiple other things there where he was caring for the foreigner and the widow. Like, he was checking. I mean, you could go back and see tons of those things that he was checking. And it's like, it doesn't ever say he was checking this law here, Deuteronomy or Leviticus here. He's just living that out. That's more like, if you want to like see it applied, if you like the book of Ruth, you actually like the laws, because the laws are about loving your neighbor. So if y'all actually have a sticker here, if you like the podcast, check out the Holy Ghost stories. There's a really good series on Ruth it's just really neat. So, and also like, the corresponding law from Oregon has 11 exceptions here. Like, it's just a different type of thing. Yeah, oh, sorry, I thought I saw you. So ancient laws like Torah aren't like our laws. Scholars studying ancient cultures are beginning to recognize that ancient laws were often hypothetical rather than legislative. It's very much like, okay, you might run into a situation like this. The law code of Hammurabi had 218 laws. They were never cited in any court cases. They have lots and lots of papers. They didn't cite them. That's not how it worked. They were meant to be laws of wisdom. The Torah includes 613 or 633, and they're trying to teach Israel who God is, who they're supposed to be. They're about relationship. So y'all know we have lots of kids. Does anyone have like a list of rules for your house? Like actually like printed out? We might have a few. I was thinking on Alden's door, there's a thing we printed for Dayla, like when can you get up? Like here's the pictures. It's trying to teach her like, okay, here's what bedtime routine looks like. But I'm guessing you don't have like a law, like a book of laws, rules. This is like the house rules for Israel here, right? Everybody knows the expectations. And I mean, my kids like to play dumb, where it's just like, what are you supposed to do here? I don't know. Yes, you do. I mean, come on. That's maybe more how it is. They're the house rules for Yahweh's family. They ensure peace between family members. They're not the main thing, but rather the backdrop for the main thing, the loving relationship. We don't have families so that we can do chores and have rules. We do chores and have house rules to facilitate life in a family. It's all the 12 tribes. They are a family. They are God's treasured possession. We're sort of running through some of that. But, I don't know, does that make sense? I don't know if that rings. Yes.
I was going to say, so would you say that the Ten Commandments wasn't sufficient to address every possible scenario and God needed to provide additional clarification on?
You even see that in the Torah. So we Steve Clover, when he came, he actually talked about this a little bit with Zelophehad's daughters. So you see where it's like, okay, so we have this scenario, we're getting into the land, and the daughters are like, hey, there's not a man in our family anymore, and our father died, so what's going to happen with our inheritance? Our father's name is going to be lost. What do we do? They go to Moses. And Moses is like, that's a good question. Let's go to God. And God's like, what they say is good. Yeah. Let's consider this scenario. It's not covering, trying to give wisdom for what do you do here? It gives a whole lot of for instances, but it's not the same sort of thing as and to your point, the Pharisees were trying to cover, add some more hedges around the law to make sure that they didn't break into God's law, and then they sort of got blinded by what some of those things were. But, I mean, you can look at, I think the Pharisees sometimes get a bad rap. I think we forget that Paul was also a Pharisee, and he can speak about how he loved God and how he was like, I didn't have a bad conscience before God before this. Like, I'm just trying to do what God says, and I'm trying to do it now by following Jesus.
She referenced the same way I've heard it with like the fence experiment, as she mentioned.
Oh yeah.
Building a playground. I heard that like as an actual study. Education goes in phases, and for a while there they thought it's kind of like the open classroom thing. Let's not put fences because it'll make the kids feel restrained.
Mm-hmm.
But when they did that, the kids all huddled in the middle of the playground because it didn't feel safe out there. And that's kind of what the laws were. It was that safety fence.
What you just said triggered a thought. Kara, I'm going to ask you a question. Do our kids do better with or without structure? With. So
She didn't even have to think.
she didn't. I know she didn't. She knows what I'm thinking about. Something that we do is, was it 2 weeks ago when we had the ice storm? We were in the house, and the kids, the first day of that, sort of like, y'all figure out, just enjoy your day off. And it was, I don't know if it's fair to say mayhem, but it was pretty crazy. So the next day, what Kara did, she came up with a set of, a schedule. From this hour to this hour, here's what you're gonna do. From this hour to this hour, here's what you can do. From this hour to this hour, you can do what you want. And then from this hour to this hour. And it was just like different kids. It was a different day. It was peaceful. And they actually were like, can we do that? I mean, that they will ask for that. Because they don't want full freedom. They want freedom to be able to not have to think about what they're going to be doing yet. It's like, there's a lot of things there where I think there's wisdom in that. It's just, the laws were, in that context, they're so long ago that we just don't understand or see it that way. And it would look different for us. I think the laws also, we think about in Jesus' time, the laws weren't even written to his context. Laws with the temple. Well, where's the temple? It was destroyed. They're in a different context at this point. So it's not like even a static, here's what it is for all time. And that's not how, even Jesus saw it. It was, right here, you're about to be going into a new land. What does it look like for you? I think that's some of those really weird ones, like don't boil a goat in its mother's milk. It's talking about something with, the Canaanites did this. You don't need to look like them. I'm like, does that need to be said? Apparently God thought it did to them then. I don't have a lesson for us for that here, except to say, be careful that you don't look like the world.
I'm thinking about the parallel of with our kids, because they don't have as much experience in the world as we have as the adults who are parenting them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we are giving them the structure around how things look and how things need to be, because based on our experience, we know what to expect. And in the same way, the Israelites didn't know what to expect going into this land and this new place. And so God had to tell them and give them that structure.
Yeah.
Whereas later, once the rules were kind of learned and figured out, they might be able to infer things on their own without it all being so spelled out.
Yeah, yeah.
David, you said that is, 20 years ago, how many of us laughed when somebody, McDonald's put a label as coffee is hot?
Yeah.
Now people drink iced coffee, so I can really see that you may want to tell somebody whether it's hot or not. That kind of goes back to the older, the sticker on the plug-in, the little sticker that says do not operate in water, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody did it.
Right.
Most common sense people know not to put it in the water.
Yeah.
But somebody did it, and that's why they had
Mm-hmm.
it. So that's what you just said about boiling with the milk, is I saw somebody do it, I don't want you to do it. So we're gonna tell you not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Or give you instructions. You say, I like instructions. I'm gonna give you instructions on this may be bad for you.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't want us to feel bad that it's like, it is not going to always be easy to read because it wasn't written to us. You know, it wasn't written to our time. It wasn't even written to the time of Jesus. It was written before Jesus, like 1,400 years before. I mean, it's just, maybe not 14, but it was written a long time before even Jesus. And so it's like, there's a long time there. We do better reading narratives. But I think we also need to see that there's lessons and instructions in those too. And I think that's something there. I am going to go to our Torah time now. So y'all remember that. That's the, look at this. This is one that is in Deuteronomy. Can I get a volunteer to read this? It says Deuteronomy 17:14 through 17. We're talking about going into the land, so it's like, okay. You can read it up there.
Just off the screen.
Or you can read it either way, yeah.
Okay. When you come to the land that the Lord your God is giving you, and you possess it, and dwell on it, and then say, I will set a king over me like all the nations that are around me, you may indeed set a king over you whom the Lord your God will choose. One from among your brothers you shall set as king over you. You may not put a foreigner over you who is not your brother. Only he must not acquire many horses for himself, or cause the people to return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses, since the Lord has said to you, you shall never return that way again. And he shall not acquire many wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he acquire for himself excessive silver and gold.
Okay. This one's actually pretty easy to read. It's not like super like, what's the context here? And I was just hearing a discussion on like 1st and 2nd Samuel, like how they have the judges and like the judges are sort of helping. It's like, who's their king at this point when the judges are? It's God, right? God is to be their king. And yet, you read through Judges, there's no king in Israel. That is that common refrain over and over. And it's not saying there's not a king. It's the people aren't viewing God as king. Does Samuel like it when they finally ask for a king? He gets pretty upset about it. And he says, he feels like they're rejecting him. God says, they haven't rejected you, they've rejected me. Go ahead and let them do it. And there's a phrase I hear sometimes, it's like God handing them over to their actions. I think it's sort of like, listen, I warned you what's going to happen when you get a king. You can have a king, y'all ask for it, this is what you're going to get. And you're going to get all the consequences with that. I mean, God still used that as part of his plan, right? I mean, there's King David, there's all the things that go through that. There's the line, and it leads to Jesus. But, it's sort of like, what would it have looked like had they not asked? I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. That's not something that we can ever have an answer for. I read this because who is the greatest king in 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd? Who is the greatest king? Judah, Israel, or the combined kingdom? David. Who was the second greatest? Solomon. Do you agree with that?
Depends on your criteria.
Depends on your criteria. So what was it about Solomon's kingdom that was good?
He went against 16 and 17. He went against 16 and 17.
He did. And one of the things that's interesting with the Bible is how when you read some of the things, it will not come out and say, like, it's clear when you read later, Solomon had many wives. Or, think about Jephthah. Jephthah's like, made a rash vow, and he gets back, and it's like, guess I'm going to have to sacrifice my daughter now. And I just read through in my reading, like, the whole section about if a daughter or a wife makes a rash vow, And it's like, I mean, I think God might have been like, if you make a rash vow and someone like, Jephthah wasn't doing God's will when he did that. It wasn't just like he made a bad vow. It was also that like that wasn't a good vow in the first place. But it doesn't always come out and say, this was a bad choice. We're supposed to get some wisdom from that. Like think about some of the things Abraham did. It just presents what Abraham and Sarah did, like, well, choose Hagar. It's sort of up to us to sort of go in and interpret and meditate on that. It's like, was that a good idea? I mean, they weren't really like trusting on God there. They were trying to step in on it. Can God work through that? Yeah. There's a whole lot of those things in the Old Testament. It's like, it's not going to just come out and say, beat you over the head and say that this was the law that was broken here. We're supposed to have some wisdom. Look at this. Compare and contrast with 1 Kings 10. Not many horses. How many horses did he have? 12,000. Don't return to Egypt to acquire horses. The horses were imported from Egypt. Shall not acquire any wives. Yep.
700, I think.
There was, yeah, concubine. I mean, like, nor shall he acquire excessive silver and gold. The weight of gold yearly was 666 talents. Nothing was made of silver because silver was considered of little value. I mean, like, is it trying to tell you something with this? Because I gotta say, whenever I first read this, especially, you know, like when I was younger, it's like, man, that must have been awesome. Look at all that stuff. Look at all that. There are 12,000 horses. I don't even know what that looks like. There was so much gold. Like, who cares? Silver was nothing. It's just like you toss your silver. Like, what was it trying to tell us here? It's trying to point you back. Like, this isn't what he was supposed to do. But we read the wife part. Like, that was bad. What about the rest? He wasn't following God with these other things either. Do you know what the king was supposed to do? When he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself in a book a copy of this law, approved by the Levitical priests. And it shall be with him, and he shall read in it all the days of his life. Let him learn to fear the Lord his God by keeping all the words of this law and these statutes, and doing that his heart may not be lifted up above his brothers, and that he may not turn aside from the commandment, either to the right hand or to the left, so that he may continue long in his kingdom, he and his children in Israel. I've heard it described that the way that Solomon was supposed to be was he was supposed to be a Bible nerd. He was supposed to be doing all the same things like the priests were. He was supposed to have a copy of it that he wrote himself. I don't know that we actually. Do y'all know of any kings that did that? I was trying to think. Like the closest I could think of was like Josiah's reforms. You know, where it's like he had some of those things, but it's like he was supposed to know this thing, and like he was supposed like Psalm 1. He was supposed to meditate on it day and night.
It's Josiah when they like found the old
think
law,
so.
just kind of decrepit somewhere that not been used for so long.
Yeah, and
pretty
so it's
sad.
like, I mean, they had a reform. Josiah's reforms were a big part, and it's just like, but then he dies in a battle, you know. So it's just like, and then a few decades later is when Babylon destroys Jerusalem. So it's like, I don't know. It's just, we did review the curriculum, like the children's curriculum here, and I do think it does a pretty good job of portraying Solomon as not the best. But it's like, I mean, you think about how Solomon is portrayed. It's like he was good and then. And he did have that prayer for wisdom, right? But I mean, maybe he was starting to mess up a little bit earlier than we often think. Like he was starting to really seek out things instead of like trusting in God. I don't know. I mean, it's just like, it's something to consider. And again, it doesn't come out and beat you over the head with that. You sort of have to know it. And it's like, I think that's one of those things where it's like just meditating on some of these things. And I think the Bible encourages us to wrestle with some of like, was that a good decision or not? Ezra and Nehemiah is another one. You think about that whole thing where it's like, y'all need to like divorce here and like send them away. It's like, I mean, what about all the things about like the people should come to, like all the nations should come. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where it's not as obvious. Like, did they mess up? Yeah. But did they mess up more? I don't know. Like, it's, it's just, we have to wrestle with that. So, I think it's all for,
I don't guess I ever realized, I've got it underlined here, so I guess I did, but just forgotten that kings specifically were told not to have many wives, so he's just directly going against that.
yeah. I almost put them side by side so you could sort of see. The order is a little bit off, but it's check, 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 check. And I think that's what he's trying to do there. Yeah, go ahead.
This made me think about how Israel and Judah sort of became two different kingdoms, and was it because they were two different? I don't remember why they did it. Or was it because of the
Solomon's son Rehoboam, it was that your father worked us basically as slaves, and he was like, the older mentors were like, you should give him a break. But his younger friends were all, tell him you're gonna be like scorpions, and my thumb is gonna, I don't remember the word, there's something about his thumb pressing on his pinky, yeah. And you're like, that's great, I'm gonna be that. But that's even an indictment a little bit on Solomon. Like, Solomon was working his own people like slaves at that point. But so Jeroboam comes in, leads them all away. Rehoboam goes and tries to fight, and there's a prophet who's like, no, I've taken the kingdom away. This is what I said was going to happen. So that's when they split, and there's a few alliances after that, but for the most part, they don't. And the alliances are sort of frowned upon too. Like, was that Jehoshaphat and Ahab, I think. So, yeah, they split up at that point.
You're good with this history.
Some of it.
I get all the names mixed up.
I remember some of them if you were to like, but anything else? Next week, we are finally going to get into the Ten Commandments. So, anyone trivia? What's the? I think it's a Greek word. Does anyone know the other word for the Ten Commandments?
The Decalogue.
Decalogue. What is that? Do you know what it stands for?
Deca's 10.
Log is a word.
10 words. It's the 10 words. That's actually what it's usually referred to in the Hebrew is the 10 words.
Theologians have to have their own lingo.
They do. Yeah. I'm not going to say.
The rest of us keep up.
I try not to use too many nerdy words. I do. I'm sorry. Thank y'all. Oh yeah. Anyone want a copy of the single law? I can send this to you.
Yeah.
I did email it out to us. Good to speak.
Don't send it to me.
You have a law for speaking?
Everything.
I know you, but I don't.
There you go.
Oh,
Yeah. This is the baby.
Oh really?
Joe and Diane.